Let's get started with Code Commit, our first CI/CD or developer tool, and we'll see that how we can make use of Code Commit, which can be used as a private Git repository or host our private Git repositories on Amazon Web Services infrastructure. So let's go ahead and go to Code Commit. Now, before we can start creating a repository, we'll do one thing. We'll just create an IAM user, attach a policy to it, and we'll just try to create a repository and manage that repository through an IAM user. So let's go to the IAM first before I can start working on code commit and go to users. We'll create a user right now and just attach a policy, which is the administrator access. So I add a user right now and name the user as, for example, I can put Donald as the first name, the username, give access to the user so that this user can get complete access to the AWS Management Console, give my consent that yes, I want to create an IAM user, and set a custom password so that this user can easily sign in using this custom password I'm going to set for this user. And click on next. I attach a policy which is the administrator full access or admin access, just for the sake of this hands-on. And once I choose administrator access, click on next. Yeah, so we have the username as Donald with a custom password and the administrator access policy attached to the user. Click on create user. And now I just go ahead and log in on behalf of this user. So I use a different browser right now. And I just go ahead, copy the sign in URL link and paste it. So once we sign in, let me just go ahead and put the username. Already have the password put in. Okay, let's just put in the password real quick. Once I just put in the user ID and password and sign in on behalf of the IAM user, I just go ahead and start working on the code commit deployment. Or I would say I'll start creating a repository in code commit and start working towards it. So I just go to the code commit and create my first repository as an IAM user. Click on create repository, and I can just name this repository as, for example, my first test repository or REPO. And I can just put some description which is purely optional. So this is my first repository on AWS code commit. You can put some comment just for the documentation purpose. It is always useful to include a lot of documentation or description so that you can easily distinguish between different resources. So I just go ahead and click on create and my repository is created. Now I'll just go ahead and add a file to it. So I just go to add files, upload a file, and I choose a file. Now I'll be giving you the scripts and the code for this hands-on. So there's a folder node.js v2 which consists of index.html file. So I'll just go ahead and upload it. So I'm just going to make a first commit to my code commit repository. So we just created a repository. We're going to make a first commit towards it. So as an author name, I just put my name over here. I put my email ID. And I just go ahead and put some message. For example, this is my first commit. Okay, click on commit changes. Okay, so the changes are being committed, and this is how you can just make your commits, or you can upload your code to the code commit repository. Now, if you just navigate on the left-hand side, we have the commit. So every commit has a commit ID. Branches, right now we're just working with the main branch or the master branch. And we can just go to settings. We can see the repository name, repository ID, the ARN or Amazon resource name, description, default branch is main branch. And from here, we can delete repository if we want. So far, we have created a repository and we made our first commit. We uploaded the index.html document to this repository. This is not the best practice. We should be making use of the Git tool installed on computers, and from there, we should be making the commits. So in this case, what I will do is that I will just go ahead and open my terminal. So I just go ahead and open the terminal right now. And you must have the Git tool installed on your computers. Now, to install Git on your local computer, you can just go to Google and you can just find out the packages that you have to install, depending upon which operating system you use, whether it's the Mac OS, it's Windows, or it's a basic Linux computer that you're using. Personally, I'm using Mac, and I already have the Git pre-installed on this machine. Now, to verify that the Git is being installed, let's type in git dash dash version. As you can see that it returns with an output. It shows me the Git version. This means that my Git is being pre-installed on this local machine. I can start using it. Now, what's next? The next thing we're supposed to do is that we have to start going for cloning the repository. Now, how to clone the repository? You run the command git clone, and then you go back to the repository. So I just go back to my IAM user account, go to repositories, choose my repository, just go to clone URL, and these are different methods we're going to be using, or we can use. We will be using the first method, or we will be using the first method, which is clone HTTPS. Okay, so I clone the URL, it shows up on the top, it's been copied. I go back to the terminal and paste it. So I'm going to clone the URL or trying to connect to the repository from my local machine. Now it is kind of cloned. You can see that it's being done. Now, one thing you have seen is that it straight away cloned my repository. And to verify that, if it is type in ls, you can see that this is being cloned. If I just go to this directory, let's type in ls, you can see that it's been showing up. Now, it didn't ask me for the credentials because I've been using this terminal for a very long time and accessing the same account. Now, just in case if it will ask you for the username and password, the process that you have to do is that you have to go to your account, your IAM account, and IAM user account, and go to the top right hand corner and go to security credentials. Okay, you need to go to security credentials, or you can just go to IAM. You have to generate the HTTPS credentials from there. If you just scroll down, you can see that it says AWS code commit credentials, right? And under the AWS code commit credentials, you have to go to HTTPS git credentials for AWS code commit. I'll show you one more time. You go to the top right hand corner, go to security credentials. You'll be presented with a page. Go to AWS code commit credentials, and then go to HTTPS git credentials for AWS code commit. Click on generate credentials, and you have to use this username and password. Now, in my case, I didn't get the prompt because I've been using the same terminal for the same account multiple times. So it's already taking my previous user ID and password. Okay. But if you're doing that for the very first time, you have to provide these credentials after you run the command git clone followed by the URL. As soon as you press enter, you have to provide these details, user ID and password. Okay. Now, I have already cloned my Git repository. What's next? If I go to my Node.js, or I would say if I just go to my this Node.js v2 blue folder, apart from the index.html file, I have other files, app.js, cron.yml, and package.json. I would like to add these files through my terminal. Okay, so how do I do that? First thing first, I copy these files to my repository folder. So I run the command cp, and I go to my desktop and I just copy and paste the entire path. So I just right click and I just copy the entire path and I just paste it, right? And I put the name of the exact folder, Node.js v2 blue, right? So let me just go over there and show you that, right? So I just put the name of the exact folder / a star and I give a space and a dot. So through this basic Linux command, I'm trying to copy all the contents from my node.js v2blue folder to this existing directory, which is my first test repository, my repository directory. So I'm copying all the contents from the node.js v2blue folder to my repository folder. Press enter, and these are being copied. Now, if I run the command git status, it says that you have copied the files, but you have to add these files. So to add these files, type in git add and a dot. So once I run this command, I'm adding all the files. So if I just run the command git status, it says that your files are being added, but you have to make the commit. To make the commit, I run the command git commit -m. So I have to put a message adding additional files. So these are the same git, these are the same standard git commands. So I made the commit, I run the git status. Now it says that you have to go for git push. Okay, so I've committed to the main branch. I have to use git push to publish to my local commits. So just type in the command git push. And now finally, I've pushed the files to my remote repository. To verify that, I just go back to my repository and let me just go back to code commit. Let me just go back to the main service. So I go to code commit and go to my repository, and you will see that the rest of the files are being uploaded successfully. So that's the best practice, that you make use of the Git tool installed on your local machine. You clone the repository, you put the credentials, and from there you make the commits or you push the files to your branches. So that's how you can make use of code commit to ensure that you can easily deploy the private Git repositories on the AWS cloud, and that's how you can make the commits successfully from your local machine. We will now start working on the next service, that's the AWS CodePipeline. So to create a complete code pipeline, I would just go ahead and start deploying my application using Elastic Beanstalk. So I just go to Elastic Beanstalk first. Now this entire hands-on is done through an IAM user account. So I stay on the same account, go to my Elastic Beanstalk page, and I can just go ahead and create an application. So I just go ahead and create an application over here and name this application. For example, this is my first Node.js app. Okay. And you can just put some in the description or just keep it as it is. Click on create. Your application is created. Create an environment in this application, and what I will do is that I name this application, or this environment name is as test environment, or env. Okay, so this is my test environment. I just put in, for example, this is my test environment. Right, so in Elastic Beanstalk, you can have prod, pre-prod, test environments. You can just run different environments sequentially or parallelly. So I create this test environment. Now the platform would be Node.js. I'll go with the sample application code. Under the presets, I choose a single instance. Click on next. And I will go with the existing roles. I can choose one of the existing key pairs. Click on skip to review. And then I click on submit. So I've used the sample application code to deploy my first application, the first environment, the test environment within the Elastic Beanstalk application. So this is the application name. I've just got the application. This is the app I've just deployed, my first Node.js app. which consists of this test environment. Now I'll deploy a prod environment. So I click on create new environment. The rest of the settings will be the same. I just name this as prod underscore, or I would say hyphen env. And I put some description over there. For example, this is my production based environment or production environment. So I can just put a description over here. And once I just put some description, I choose the same platform, which is Node.js. Same application code, sample application. I just go with a single instance preset. Click on next. So I just use existing roles, use existing key pair, click on skip to review. And then I just go ahead and click on submit. Okay. So as a prerequisite, before I can just start building my pipeline, I have deployed an application within the Elastic Beanstalk. So if I just go to the Elastic Beanstalk applications, my application is my first Node.js app, which consists of two environments, test environment and prod environment. So these two environments are completely different from each other. I can run different application version in each of these environments. So right now they're separate. So I'm running two environments in my Node.js application. I'll be using this application or these environments as a part of my pipeline project. So I just go ahead and go to CodePipeline. So I just open the pipeline in a new tab and start building a project. So I just go ahead and go to pipelines. I already have a pipeline which is being created. So let's do one thing. If I can just go ahead and just get remove or delete this pipeline because I don't need this anymore. Okay, so yeah, I've just deleted my previous pipeline. I just go ahead and click on create pipeline. And I just name it as Node.js app pipeline. I can just put any name over here. It doesn't make any difference. And once I just put a pipeline name, it creates a service role so that the code pipeline can communicate with the resources internally for its functionality, or because a lot of services, including code pipeline, they need certain permissions to interact with different services like instances or S3 packets. So I will just check the role name. This is the name of the role. It will create automatically. You don't have to change the role name. Just keep it as it is. So we name the pipeline. We accept the new service role that will be generated automatically. We click on next. Now it says source provider. I choose code commit because code commit is where my repositories are, the repository that I had created earlier. So I'll be using the code commit as a source provider. This is my repository name. This is my main branch. Okay. So I want to make sure that my source code is being picked from code commit repository. Click on next. Then build provider. Now I can just go for testing my code, but right now we just skip the build stage. So click on skip build stage, click on skip, deploy provider. Now, which service, or I would say in which of the components or services you'll be deploying your production-based code or your applications? Who would be your deploy provider? So we have a bunch of options out there. In this case, we use Elastic Beanstalk because our servers, our application is being supported by the Elastic Beanstalk. I go to Elastic Beanstalk. I stick to the same region, which is Mumbai. Choose my application name. This is the if I go to my Elastic Beanstalk, I'll be going to this application, this one, my first Node.js app, right? So I'll be choosing the application name as it is, and I choose any one of these two environments. To start with, I will choose my test environment. So I'm creating this pipeline to release the software or make the changes to the existing software, but the environment that will be impacted will be my test environment. I click on next and click on create pipeline. Okay, now the pipeline is created. It will take a few seconds for it to show up. Let's wait for a few seconds. In the meantime, In the meantime, if I just go to my Elastic Beanstalk, go to my test environment, and as if now it has not generated the link or the domain. Let's wait for some time. Yeah, here we have the domain name. If I click on this domain name, it shows a page with a green colored background. However, if I just go to my, you can see that the pipeline has started getting executed. If I go to the repository and show you the index.html code, the background color is, let me show you that. It should be blue. Yeah, you can see that. The background color is blue. This means that once the pipeline has executed the software release or the change, this green color background should turn to blue. So I go to pipeline, code pipeline. Let me just go to the pipeline project. So I just go to pipeline and it's still in progress. So it has picked the changes from the code commit. And now it has started executing that change to the Elastic Beanstalk environment, which is my test environment. You can see that it's still in progress. It will take some more time. I think it's been succeeded now. You can see that it's a success. I go back to my test environment domain name, hit refresh, and here we go. The changes are being implemented immediately once the pipeline execution was completed. Okay. Now let's do one thing. Let's add or let's extend this pipeline. We'll add some stages or some action groups. So what I will do is that I will just go to this pipeline and click on edit on the top. And after the deploy stage, I click on add stage. In the stage name, let's type in deploy to production or prod env. Okay. So I'm adding a stage so that I can deploy my software releases once they pass through the test phase to the production environment. So I also want my prod environment to get changed. I click on add stage. Now within the stages, you add the action group. I add the action group, and the very first action name that I just go for is the manual approval. So this means that before I can push the changes to the production environment, I want the changes to be approved first. Action provided will be manual approval, and that's it. You don't have to choose the ARN or URL or comments. Click on done. So I've added one action group for manual approval so that before the changes are being pushed to the production environment, the changes must be approved manually. I click on add action group, and now the second action that I will choose would be, let me just go ahead and choose the next action or type the action name first. For example, this would be deploy, or I would say Elastic Beanstalk prod env. This is the action name. Action provider would be Elastic Beanstalk. Input artifacts would be source artifact. Application name would be the app that we're working on. Now, this time the environment name would be prod environment. I want to push the change to the production environment, right? Click on done. Okay, so I have included one more action group in this stage. The first action group will ask me to manually approve the change, and thereafter, once the changes are being approved, it will be pushed further to the prod environment. Okay, I click on done and click on save. Fine. Now to test this entire pipeline, because I've just extended this pipeline further by adding one single stage with two action groups. To test it, I go back to my code commit repository, go to my HTML file and make the changes. I just change the background color. So I click on edit. And for example, the background color, I will change from blue. So for example, I make it as orange or pink. Let's make it as orange. Okay. So I change the background color to orange and I put author name, email address, or commit changes. So let's do one thing. Let's put a dot over here and click on commit changes. Now we just go to the pipeline, and you will see that once I make the changes to my files in the repository, the pipeline will start getting executed, or it will start coming to action. We'll see that it was code commit in progress just now. Now it will start pushing the change to my test environment. Let's wait and watch. So as you can see that right now, it is just pushing the change to the test environment. So if I just go to my Elastic Beanstalk test environment, go to the domain, you can see that the background color has been changed successfully. Okay, let's go back to the pipeline. And now it's waiting for the manual approval before the changes have been pushed to the prod environment. Because if I just go to the prod environment and click on the domain name, it's still blue, still green. I'm sorry, it's still green. So I just go back and go to the pipeline and click on review and approve the changes. The changes are being approved. Now the changes will be applied to the prod environment. So very soon you will see that the color of my production environment domain name, I would say the web page, or I would say the background color of my web page will change from green to orange. So I've hit refresh. It's still working behind the scenes. So because I've just approved the change to be pushed to the prod environment, very soon the background color of my production environment web application or the web page would change. So it's in progress. Let's wait for a few more seconds. Yeah, here we go. So as you can see then, this is the entire pipeline that we executed. Any changes that we make to our repository, to the files, are being picked automatically, and then it goes through different stages based on which the software can be released. Now we have skipped the build state as of now, but in the next phase, we'll just add a build server, or we just use code build to build and test our code before the changes to our code can be pushed to the test and prod environment. So as you can see that the entire pipeline was created and executed successfully. We made the changes to the code commit, then the changes were pushed to the test environment within the Elastic Beanstalk application. Then after the manual approval, the same changes were pushed to the prod environment, changing the layout of our web page or changing the background color. The next thing that we will start with would be deployment of code build project, or we'll just go ahead and deploy a build server using code build and test our code. So let's go ahead and go to the page of CodePipeline, or because all these different CI/CD tools are being presented on the same page. So let's go to build right now, go to code build and click on getting started. So we'll just create our first build project. So click on create project, and I can just name this, for example, I can just step in, for example, Node JS app project or build project. You can just put any name over here. It doesn't make any difference. You can just choose any name for your build project. Then we have to just type in the description. Now in the description, I can just type, for example, we will be testing, for important keywords on our web page or the home page, because we'll be searching for the important keywords on the web page, and we have to make sure that those keywords are available. So I just put some description in our build project. Now once I do that, I have to choose a source. I choose code commit as my source repository. I would say I will choose code commit from where I will have the code build server or the build server to pick the source code from the repository. and the branch would be the main branch. Now, the thing is that when you start going for the code build project, or once you start going for deployment of a build server, code build uses Docker at the backend to create a testing environment. For that, it needs an image. We'll just go with the managed image, and we'll just go with the operating system, which is Ubuntu. Runtime will be standard. And the image, you can choose the latest one. So I would choose the one which ends with 7.0, right? So code build will be using, or will be building a complete environment to deploy a Docker container at the backend to have this build server deployed. In terms of the role, if we just create a new role by itself, we don't have to change this configuration. Now, the thing is that code build or the build server will pick its instructions or running instructions or testing instructions from a build spec YAML file. So we will upload that file later on, but right now we'll just go ahead and start with the configuration. We'll just upload the build spec.yaml file afterwards. So the running instructions that the code build uses, it fetches those running instructions from the build spec.yaml file. In terms of the artifacts, we'll choose no artifacts. And I think that's it as of now. I just go ahead and uncheck CloudWatch because I don't want the logs to be sent to the CloudWatch. I will just go ahead and click on create build project. So my build project is created, and once it's created, we will put into the execution mode and see that how it functions, because we haven't uploaded the build spec.yaml file, so this will fail eventually. I just go ahead and click on start build, and you will see that it will run, and eventually it will lead to failure, because it's relevant that you upload the build spec.yaml file which has all the running instructions for the build server to operate. Now, if I show you the build spec.yaml file, let me just go ahead and pick that file up. So this is the build spec.yaml file that we will be uploading afterwards, not right now, because we want to see that what happens if you don't upload this build spec.yaml file. So this is the file that we're going to upload afterwards. And we have different phases. We have installation phase, pre-build phase, build phase, and post-build phase. So it will go through multiple phases. But if you see the build phase, there's a command which says grep minus fq congratulations index.html. So it will look for the congratulations keyword in the index.html page. And if this keyword is missing, then in that case, the build server will not pass a build, or it will throw an error message that this keyword is missing. But we just go to the build server first, or I would say we just go and start looking into the project, and you'll see the status has failed. If you just go to the phase details, it says download source failed. The YAML file error, YAML file does not exist. So you have to upload the build spec.yaml file, which consists of the running instructions for the build server to operate. So I will just go ahead and go to my repository, and I will straight away add the file, and I will just upload the same build spec.yaml file that I just showed you. So I just go ahead and go to my specific code build folder and upload this build spec.yaml file. I just go ahead and upload the build spec.yaml file, and I just put a dot in author name, email address, or commit message, just to make sure that I can just skip it and just straight away make the commit. I click on commit changes, and I've just uploaded this build spec.yaml file, which consists of the running instructions, which my code build will now pick up and start execute the process to test my code. I will just go ahead and go to the build project. Okay, so I just click on that, and I just click on start build one more time and wait for a few seconds for it to run, and hopefully this will function, because now we have uploaded the build spec.yaml file, and now based on what run instructions were there in the build spec.yaml file, the build server will start running the commands one by one and perform this build. So right now, the status is in progress. We just go to the phase details. As of now, it is a success. But right now it's trying to look for the build spec.yaml file because you can see that the download source is succeeded and the status is succeeded. Okay. So after we uploaded the build spec.yaml file, the code build was able to, or the build project was able to extract the running instructions from the build spec.yaml file, and my code was tested, or the source code was tested. Okay, now let's go to the pipeline that we have built earlier, and let's include this build project in our pipeline. So I click on edit. Now, generally the build phase, the building and testing phase is after the commit phase. So after we commit the changes to our code repository, then after it has to go through the build and test phase. So I click on add stage after the source or the code commit stage, and add the stage. For example, this is the build and test stage. I click on add stage, right? So it is important that you add a stage after the source or code commit stage. It's quite important that you go about doing that. Once we do that, we will add an action group. So I click on add action group, and I name this action group as, for example, build and test action group. You can just put anything over here. It's purely your choice. So I can just type in, for example, testing for keywords. Fine. And what's the next thing? The next thing is that I have to choose the action provider, which is the code build. I choose the input artifact as source artifact. Then I choose the project name, and that's it. Now I have to make sure the project is exactly the same project that we are working on. So I guess so, because I have two projects running. So yeah, this is the one. Let me just check it out because I want to make sure that the project is exactly the same that we are working on. So I just go ahead and go to the code build, and I just go ahead and just click on it because I have two projects running. So yes, this is the project we're working on, Node.js app build project. Fine. So I specify the exact project name. Build type is single, so it will trigger a single build. And I can choose a name of the output of the section. So it will produce an output artifact. So I just name it, for example, I can name it as, for example, output test artifact. I can just put any name over here. So it will produce an artifact after it runs a build. It runs a build and test process to check my code. So I click on done, and that's it. So I've just added a build and test stage, and under the action group, I had merged the code build. Okay, I click on done and click on save. So the code build project is being merged in my entire pipeline. Now let's do one thing. Let's go to the source code. Let's go to the repository and remove the congratulations keyword from the index.html page. So I just go to the source code, go to repositories, click on my repository, click on the index.html file, click edit, and I will just remove congratulations, or I can just type in, for example, hello world. Right, so I just go ahead and click on commit changes, and then I just go to the pipeline and execute the pipeline. Or I would say I don't have to execute it because I've just commit some changes. It will pick those changes up and will start going through the source phase and build phase. As you can see that the source or the commit phase has initiated because I've just committed some changes. The commit, or I would say the changes are being pushed successfully. But now I need to keep my fingers crossed. I need to see that the changes that I've made, I've removed the important keyword based on my expectation that that keyword should be there on my web page. It is expected that it will fail this build and test stage. So let's wait for another few seconds. It is in progress right now, and you can see that it has failed. I click on view in code build, and I just go to the phase details, and you will see that it says build failed, command execution error, because it was unable to fetch the congratulations keyword from the index.html page. Okay, so you can see that it has failed eventually. Now I can make the corrections right now. I go to the source code, go to the repository, and I just go to my index.html file, click edit, and I restate congratulations over here so that this can function. I would say it can easily pass the build and test phase. Fine. So I had put congratulations back, and I have just put a dot in the author name, email address, and commit message because I just want to test the things out. But in a business environment, whenever you make any commits, make sure that you put the author name, email address, and put some message. So I click on commit changes. Now again, the pipeline will be executed by itself. I go to the pipelines, and now it will, because I've just commit a change, within a few seconds, it will detect that change. From source stage, you will go to the build and test stage. You can see that this is AWS code commit is in progress just now. And within a few seconds, it will pass on to the build and test stage, and it should pass that stage. The reason being, because I have made the correction to my index.html file. Okay, right now it's in progress. Let's keep our finger crossed. Let's see what happens. As you can see that it has succeeded now. Fine. So that's how it functions. Now, this is how you make use of code build. You create a code build project, and you have to upload the build spec.yml file with running instructions that the code build will pick up to run the test against the source code or the code that you have merged with the repository. Now, the next CI/CD tool that we're going to discuss is the code deploy. Now, to start working on the code deploy, we have to first thing first, we have to create two roles. So I'll just go to the IAM and just go to roles and create two roles for the code deploy to function. So one role will be assigned to the code deploy, and the other role will be assigned to the instances that will be managed by the code deploy. So I click on create role, and in the use cases, I will choose the use case with this code deploy because this role that we're going to create is for code deploy. I choose code deploy, and you can see that it allows code deploy to call services such as autoscaling on my behalf. So I want the code deploy to just function internally with some other services or instances. I choose code deploy as use case, click on next. Now automatically the policy is being included. You don't have to add on any additional policy. Click on next, and you just assign a role name. For example, type in code deploy IAM role, right? So just put a simple random name, and that's it. Just go ahead and click on create role, and the role has been created. So this first role would be assigned to the code deploy. So at the time of code deploy configuration, this role must be provided. So it is relevant that you assign the role name, or I would say you configure the role prior to configuring the code deploy. What's the next thing? The next thing is that you have to create a role for the instance so that the instance can have the read-only access to the S2 bucket, because within the S2 bucket or inside the S2 bucket will store our application code. I click on create role, and I choose EC2 as a common use case. Click next. I just look for S3 read-only access. Fine, this is the policy name, S3 read-only, and click on next. So for example, in this case, you can just put any name over here. I just type in EC2 role S3 code deploy, because we want the instance to fetch its application data from S3 bucket. It must have the instances must have the read-only access to the S3 service. Click on create role, and these two roles which are important for us uh, to create, we have already created these roles. Okay, what's the next thing? The next thing is that we have to mention the bucket and also launch two instances with the code agent deployed upon them. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's create the instances first. Let's deploy the instances first. So I just go ahead and just go to the EC2, and we'll launch two instances. You can launch multiple instances at once. It's purely your choice, but in this case, I will deploy two instances right now. So in this case, I will just go ahead and go to launch instance and click on launch instance one more time. And I just name it as, for example, code deploy test. Right, so let's put a tag name over here. You don't have to change the Amazon Linux 2023 AMI. You can just keep it as it is. Don't have to change it. So Amazon Linux 2023 AMI is the default one. Just keep it to as it is, or stick to the default AMI. Don't change the test type. For the key pair, you can just proceed without a key pair. And under security group, we will allow the SSH from anywhere and HTTP traffic from the internet. So we'll open these two ports, 22 and 80, which means that we allow these two protocols, SSH and HTTP, to be accessed from any of the sources. Under the advanced details, I just go ahead and choose the role that I created for the instance. So which role I'm talking about? The role that we create this one, EC2 role S3 code deploy, so that the instances can fetch its application data or their application data from the S3 bucket. So I go to the IAM instance profile, and here we go. So I choose this role to be assigned to my instances to fetch their zip files or application data from the S3 buckets or S3 bucket. Okay, so we just include the tag. We just go with the default AMI, default instance type. You don't need the key pair. Please make sure that you allow the SSH and HTTP traffic from anywhere. Under the advanced details, you have to choose the IAM instance profile, the role that you have already created for the instance to access the S3. The last thing is that you have to include a script in the user data so that you can install the code deploy agent upon the instances. So we have to install the code deploy agent upon instances so that the instances can register themselves to the code deploy, and from the code deploy you can remotely execute the commands, or you can push the changes or software releases. Now I already have included this code or this bash script. You have to just copy it as it is. Code deploy agent bootstrap script.sh. This will be included in resources, and you have to just go ahead and put that in the user data. So this script will install the code deploy agent upon the instances. Now the number of instances I'll put as 2. So I want to deploy 2 instances at once or in one single shot. I click on launch instance, and my 2 instances will be launched while installing the code deploy agent upon them. The next thing I'll do is I'll just go to the S3 and create a bucket inside the same region where my code deploy would be configured, which is Mumbai. So I click on create bucket. I name it as, for example, code deploy S3 bucket. So you can put a unique name. Let's put in Mumbai at the end as a prefix. All right. So code deploy S3 bucket Mumbai. I just put a name. I choose region as Mumbai. So because the code deploy configuration, the instances, and the bucket must be in the same region. In my case, I'm using Mumbai as a region for this entire deployment. I click on create bucket, and I will just upload the zip file or the application code. So because I already have pre-packaged it, I click on upload, add the file, and I will give you access to this file. So under the code deploy, we have this thing called sample app linux.zip. So you have to upload this zip file as it is and click on upload. Once uploaded, you have to click on close, choose the file, and we have to use its S3 URI. Okay, we'll use it afterwards, but right now we have already uploaded this zip file, and the location of the zip file will be provided as an input when we start configuring the code deploy. Okay, so as of now, we have created 2 roles, we have launched 2 instances, and we have created the S3 bucket and uploaded our zip file or the application data to the S3 bucket. Now let's start working towards the code deployment, because we have to go to the code deploy, create a deployment group, and then create a deployment inside that group. So I just go back to my CI/CD tool, or I can access all the tools on the same page. Go to code deploy, click on getting started, and click on create application. I name this as, for example, my first code deploy app. Compute platform, I choose EC2 on-premises. Click on create application. Now, once you create the application, you have to create a deployment group, and you name it as, for example, my test deployment group. You have to select the service role. Now, this is the same role that you've created for the code deploy. Okay. And under the environment configuration, you have to choose the Amazon EC2 instances. And based on the tag value, you have to choose the specific instances. So we are targeting the instance with the tag name code deploy test. After that, you can see that it says matching instances, 2 unique match instances. Now it says that you want to install the code deploy agent using SSM. I would say never, because using the shell script, we already have installed the code deploy agent upon instances. Deployment settings, code deploy default all at once. This means that I want the deployment to be initiated to both instances in one single shot. So both instances would be upgraded, or the software would be released to both instances at once. I'll go with that. I will uncheck load balancer because we're not going to deploy any load balancer over here or engage any load balancer. I click on create deployment group. Then I click on create deployment, and I have to provide the S3 URI of the zip file. So I've already copied that. I just paste it, and that's it. So you don't have to configure anything else because other options are default. So if I just go back to my S3 bucket, you have to make sure that you choose a zip file and go to copy S3 URI. And then once you click on it, it generates the exact location of the zip file of your source code, or the exact zip file which is stored in the S3 bucket. So it will fetch the zip file to unpack the source code and release the software on both instances. Click on create deployment, and the deployment will get initiated. It says it's a success. The deployment has created. Now you can see the deployment status. It's saying installing application to instances. So it will extract a zip file. It will extract all the zip file and push the application or the software, or release the software on both instances. So that's all about the code deploy. You can make use of code deploy to push the changes or release the software or the application on multiple instances at once, and you can target those instances using their tag value.